Good afternoon to all. Kanmani Vyajate Prachna. Wisdom manifests itself in action. In tune with this motto of University of Kerala, the mother university of the state, being established in 1937 by a promulgation of then Maharaja of Travancore, Sri Chittira Tirunal Balarama Varma. We have gathered here today for a unique and spectacular event. Let us start this by invoking the blessings of the Supreme Prayer.
ഇരുൾ മാറിപ്പൊൻ പ്രഭവീശട്ടെ ജീവിതം വെറുമൊരു നീർപോളയാണെങ്കിലും ഒരു കതിരെങ്കിലതു മാത്രം മതി എൻ്റെ ഹൃദയം വെളിച്ചം നുകർന്നിടട്ടെ പല ജന്മം കൈക്കൊണ്ട ശേഷം സുഹൃദത്തിൻ ഒരു വരമല്ലേ മനുഷ്യജന്മം സഫലമീ ജീവിതം അറിവുകൾ കൊണ്ടിനി സുരഭിലമാക്കുക നാം ഇന്നും സുരഭിലമാക്കുക നാം ഇരുൾ മാറിപ്പൊൻ പ്രഭവീശട്ടെ ജീവിതം വെറുമൊരു നീർപോളയാണെങ്കിലും ഒരു കതിരെങ്കിലതു മാത്രം മതി എൻ്റെ ഹൃദയം വെളിച്ചം നുകർന്നിടട്ടെ ഹൃദയം വെളിച്ചം നുകർന്നിടട്ടെ.
Next, we invite Dr. Suni CV, Head of the Department of Chemistry, for the welcome address.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The best in us, the very best in is to be shared with everyone, which makes the world a knowledgeable and scholarly place. On behalf of the Department of Chemistry and University of Kerala and also Kerala State Higher Education Council, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to this Erudite lecture program. The Erudite Scholar in Residence program, spearheaded by the Kerala State Higher Education Council, to facilitate interactions between distinguished scholars and higher education institutions, has paved the way for international collaborations. The Erudite is one of the innovative concepts undertaken by the state government of Kerala to rejuvenate the field of higher education in the state and to strengthen the research activities of various universities in Kerala. Eminent academics from India and abroad are invited to state universities under this program. The University of Kerala, the mother university in the state, is also the first university in Kerala accredited by NAC with the highest grade of A++ and ranked 24th in India by NIR of 2023. As part of this program, we are extremely honored by the presence of such an accomplished person, 2022 Chemistry Nobel laureate, Professor Morten P. Meldal, with us. So, coming to my obligation, first of all, I warmly welcome the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University of Kerala, Professor Dr. Mohanan Kunnumel, who is presiding over this function. He has given immense support and timely suggestions throughout this program. We welcome you, sir, to this program. Distinguished guest of this program, Professor Morten P. Meldal, professor at the University of Copenhagen and is the head of its Center of Evolutionary Chemical Biology. He founded the Society of Combinatorial Science in 1999 and he won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his role in developing click chemistry. We are incredibly grateful for your presence here and we respectfully welcome you, sir, to this function. Fadriam Mary Sen-Hilaire, wife of Professor Meldal, is an eminent person in the domains of business development, women empowerment, and career perspective of women in STEM areas. She will also deliver an invited lecture to us, and we delightfully extend our warm welcome to you to this event, Madam. Our syndicate is the backbone of all our success in our university. I am happy to welcome our syndicate member, Professor Dr. K.G. Gopchandran, Professor at the Department of Optoelectronics, University of Kerala, to this event. On this occasion, I also welcome our syndicate member, Professor Dr. Radhamani PM, Professor at the Department of Botany, University of Kerala. As a customary, I welcome Dr. Ani Dipti, Assistant Professor and Coordinator of this whole event, to this function. Finally, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the delegates, distinguished invitees, my colleagues in the university, and all the students from the campus and also from the affiliated colleges and other institutes gathered here. And I hope your enthusiastic participation will make this event a successful one. Let's make this occasion a memorable and enjoyable experience for everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. It's our privilege to invite the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University of Kerala, Dr. Mohanan Kundumal, for the presidential address.
Good afternoon. Most respected Professor Morton Meldal, who is talking to us, and Madam Dr. Federica Maria Hilari, and my colleagues in the university, respected teachers, and my dear student. It's a great opportunity for the oldest university in the state, which continues to be the best university in the state. And we have got all the rankings and all the certifications. And adding to that, we are having an eminent Nobel laureate. He is very tall in chemistry, and physically also he is very tall. Welcome to you. Welcome, sir. Welcome to this great university. And all of you are here to listen to his speech, and I have no business to interfere in that. I welcome you on behalf of the entire university. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Lighting of a lamp symbolizes the triumph of knowledge over ignorance. We request the dignitaries on the dais to officially inaugurate the event by lighting the lamp, which will be followed by the formal introduction and invited lectures.
Distinguished guests, my dear colleagues, my dear students, ladies and gentlemen, warm good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of the department, it's my utmost privilege to introduce Professor Morten P. Meldal to all of you. A professor in chemistry at the University of Copenhagen, Denmark, Professor Meldal is recognized for his groundbreaking contributions in chemistry. Professor Meldal's most notable achievement lies in the development of copper-catalyzed azide alkyne cycloaddition reaction, a cornerstone of click chemistry. This efficient and versatile reaction revolutionized the field of organic synthesis, enabling the rapid and selective formation of complex molecules. In 2022, Professor Meldal's contribution to click chemistry was honored with the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. He was one among the top 3 candidates for Nobel Prize in 2019 as well. Professor Meldal's specialties span combinatorial chemistry, click chemistry, polymer chemistry, organic synthesis, automation in synthesis, artificial receptors and enzymes, nanoassays, biomolecular recognition, enzyme activity, cellular assays, molecular immunology, nanoscale, MS and NMR encoding. He founded the Society of Combinatorial Sciences, of which he is also the president. He has served as a professor of chemistry at the University of Copenhagen since 1996, inspiring and mentoring generations of scientists. He has published more than 300 publications and holds more than 21 patents. He is also the company founder and CSO of Betamab, a company that conducts biotechnology and pharmacological research, diagnostics and pharmaceutical development. His dedication to teaching and research has earned him numerous accolades, including the Vincent Do Vignod Award of the American Peptide Society, Ralph Hirschman Award of the American Chemical Society, Niels Jerem Gold Medal in Chemistry in Denmark from Denmark, and Leonidas Servas Award by European Peptide Society, to mention just a few. With profound gratitude and humility, let's join our hands to welcome Professor Meldal for his erudite lecture.
Is there a pointer somewhere? Yes. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Kerala State. Thank you to University of Kerala and all the people who have been involved in arranging this opportunity for us, including my very good old friend and previous postdoc, Manat Renil, who has been responsible for much of the design of the program. I also would like to thank Kerala State Police for taking so good care of us during our stay here in Kerala. It's not every day you get to ride through the city with police escort. So thank you very much for that. Today I am not going to talk about the QAC reaction. I'm going to actually change a little bit and talk more scientifically about another click reaction which we find is actually very exciting. It's an intramolecular reaction and we call it ENIC reaction. I'll come back to what it is later on. But initially I would just like to give a brief overview of why we obtained this Nobel Prize. So what does it take to become a click reaction, the ENIC reaction? But before we go into that, I would like to say that when you get a Nobel Prize, you are asked to have opinions about everything. In order to facilitate that message, I have 4 mantras here, which I think are the most important issues, probably worldwide. First of all, chemistry is everything. There's nothing around us that is not chemistry. When we are hungry, it's chemistry. When we feel pain, it's bradykinin. When we feel good, it's dopamine, or maybe it's oxytocin that create empathy towards our children. It's whip peptides when we feel hungry, and so on. So there's a lot of things that goes into understanding the chemistry world that we live in, and the way that is chemistry is the basis for development of life. Because chemistry is everything, because chemistry is our food, our cars, our computers, everything in there is made out of molecules that have been put together in an organized manner. Because of that, we need to have our youth concerned with chemistry from the very beginning. So from first class in the curriculum, we should include pleasurable learning of the three-dimensional world of chemistry. Not strange formulas that is hard to understand, but actually what it looks like and why it reacts like it does. And then we should have research without constraint, because all disruptive discoveries comes out of research where we have results that are unexpected. If it was expected, somebody would have done it before. If it was expected, it would be very easy to do. If it's unexpected, and when we can observe it in our chemistry as something we do not plan, just happens like that. And if we are observant, we can actually make use of that information. Yeah. So in order to get that to work, we need funding without restraints. So that means funding by performance. If we perform very well for the last 3 years, short horizon, we should accept that as researchers. Short horizon. Have we done a lot of work in the last 3 years and it resulted in good results? We could publish. We get some more money to continue the good process instead of having blue sky ideas, a lot of competition and so on, which is judged by people who don't have the capacity to actually judge what is applied for. So I think funding by performance is the best way to go forward in research. I share the prize with Caroline Bertozzi and Barry Sharpless, two very good friends of mine. We were in the US several times around 2000, where Barry was in for the Nobel Prize. I actually have 2 of his small vials with the chemicals that he won from his first Nobel Prize. So at Carlsberg Laboratory, I started working on polymers, all sorts of chemistries in order to perform combinatorial chemistry on solid support, make many compounds. And this is a unique platform where we have polymers that can be used for synthesis as well as bioassay. So we can do a lot of chemical reactions on these supports, and we can make combinatorial libraries of millions of compounds. And we can also do enzymatic reactions on these supports. So that's a very good starting point. And during all of this work, we of course came on to the QARC reaction by Christian Wenzel-Thorne, who was a PhD student at the time. But we also developed something that is called N-acylaminium ion reactions on solid support, and that was again a completely serendipitous observation. So the QARC chemistry came because Christian wanted to do acylation of acetylenes with acid chlorides, and we used this technology that we had developed in the lab with the aceto-acid chlorides. That should work very easily to get us these kind of compounds, but it didn't happen. Instead, we got the triazole with a fully active acid chloride. Completely unexpected, but Christian, he wanted to quit his PhD study. He said, this is not possible to do, I don't want to do it. But we looked into this reaction and it was very, very promising, and it did exactly what we were looking for with the solid phase combinatorial chemistry. So we took this reaction and investigated it with all the different functionalities you have in proteins, and then Christian could present it in 2001 in APS. What is it? Yeah, an alkyne is a bag full of electrons. These electrons is in the HOMO here, and this HOMO is looking for electron-deficient molecules, which could be, for example, a copper 1. Could also have been silver 1 or gold 1, but copper 1 has a special property of acting as a very good catalyst for these reactions. It sits on the electrons, and that acidifies the proton. It takes the place of the proton, and another copper 1 cation is coming in to remove the electrons from the alkyne, so it opens it up like a can of sardines. Get to the LUMO. This is the LUMO of the alkyne with the metals on it. And that fits exactly with the HOMO of the A side, which then creates the two new bonds and provide us with a triazole. First, we have the loss of one copper atom, then a second copper atom, and you get the triazole product. And this is why it's so extremely selective and efficient. So Christian was looking into developing a new set of chemistries which are completely orthogonal to this huge toolbox that we have in organic chemistry. And we were not the only one looking into that. Also Caroline Bertozzi, Barry Sharpless, and later on the TCO reaction in 2008 fits into this orthogonal little toolbox where chemical reactions in the little toolbox don't influence any chemistry in the big toolbox and vice versa. So that creates a lot of opportunities to build molecular robots or do structural control with click reactions. Here's a cell membrane, and we have used these kind of molecules that you see here. These kind of molecules, the targoplasines, which are the killers of these animals in the innate immune system. And we have looked into their activity, and we made these beta hairpins with triazoles, and then we try to open up the cell membrane the way that it works, this antibiotic. The content of the cell flows out, and you get the activity to work for you. This is what it looks like, the targoplasine, and we are replacing these two disulfide bonds with triazoles to see if that would work for us. And we try that on 4 different cell lines, and you can see one of the cell lines is completely resistant to targoplasine 1, whereas replacing the 2 disulfide bonds with our triazole gives a fully active peptide. So this is the background for the click reactions, and if I should say what it needs, what you need to become a click reaction, it is that you have a large delta G for reaction, at least 50 kilojoule per mole, to ensure that you have a quantitative chemical transformation at low concentrations. The click functional group should be inert to other reaction conditions, and also all other groups should be inert to the click reaction conditions. This is a key to click reactions. The click reaction should also preferably be readily installed independent of the molecular architecture. The click reaction should be selective, clean, and orthogonal at room temperature. At room temperature is very important. It should be stereo and video selective as well as biocompatible. It should perform independent on the environment, including water and oxygen. It should be triggered preferably. If you can trigger it, you can control it either by, for example, light or by a catalyst. And then it should preferably facilitate it through templated coordination, and it should be enable synthesis of otherwise inaccessible molecular structures and properties. There's also a nice to have here, and these are just, the normal preparative nice to haves. But the need to haves are up there. So what I would like to go through today is these structures that you have here in the center by the ENIC reaction. This is our platform, combinatorial chemistry, assays to isolate active molecules. We analyze them, we inject them in a mouse, and we can see the activity of a particular enzyme here in this foot. We can grow the cells on the beads, find actives, and analyze them and go there. I'll come more into this assay towards the end. So we were trying to install aldehydes on the N-terminal of a peptide in order to use them as electrophiles to build functionality, organic functionality into the peptides. And this was very, very difficult until we found out that we should just install a methyl group on the nitrogens, then everything would work. But then we started to investigate what is it that makes it difficult for using the normal peptides. And to our surprise, the aldehydes actually reacted with the amide bonds in the peptide backbone. So that could be immediately something new. And here is the aldehyde. Here is a small peptide with a C nucleophile sitting here on the side. So we release this aldehyde. It forms the hydroxylactam. That forms an extremely reactive N-acylaminium ion here. And this N-acylaminium ion is looking for electron density. It finds it right here on the tryptophan, and it closes the ring. And it does so with 100% stereoselectivity. So this is a very prominent new reaction, and we will now like to see if it can be used generally for all sorts of purposes. So the reason it works so well is that if we do molecular dynamics, we can see the aldehyde are very close to the amide bonds in the backbone, and it does a ring closure here. And then this nucleophile is situated right on top of it to do the next step of the reaction. So we would like to have a number of accesses to aldehyde building blocks, and here is shown a malonic ester synthesis. First we install one at the aldehyde here. We protect the aldehyde, and then we install a side chain, amino acid side chain here, and that is a building block for aldehyde introduction into peptides. We can also do this with phenylacetic ester synthesis, just installing the aldehyde and protecting it to give us this kind of building block. That's two methods. The third method is by oxidation of a diol. Protection here, oxidation of a diol, protection and oxidation in the other end, so we get a long chain carboxylic acid. We can also do an oxidation of a vinyl group to give an aldehyde here. And these are extremely good conditions for that reaction, which is necessary because we carry it out on solid support. Finally, we can use the amino acids themselves as a source of aldehydes by reducing this part to the aldehyde and connecting this via a carbonyl or carbamate to the peptide backbone. So we do first a reduction to the aldehyde, then we do the protection of the aldehyde. We do a N-terminal deprotection, and then we add this carbonyl pentafluorophenyl carbamate. Now, does these reactions really work as click reactions? And one of the requirements is that you have a quantitative reaction under mild conditions. And we can, with 10% TFA, that's very mild acidic conditions, we can get this reaction to go in these four cases here very easily. You can see a quantitative formation of just one product by HPLC. This is crude products off the resin. And here you see the NMR spectra, very clean reactions, only one stereoisomer is formed. And that stereoisomer we can analyze by NOE, by NMR here. Proton 1 here has a good NOE, strong NOE to proton 3. So this is the absolute configuration of that molecule. And they are 100% stereoselective in all these reactions. Here we have the aldehyde with the side chain and a lot of different substituents here on the tryptophanes. These substituents on the tryptophanes are introduced by synthesis, so a lot of them you can only get as a racemic mixture here. Our building block can be racemic here. So if we look at the next slide, we can see the result is 2 peaks because we have a non-resolved stereocenter, but the reaction is completely stereoselective. The same if we have these racemic tryptophanes, you can see we get 2 products, but these are formed in a completely diastereoselective manner. And that goes all the way through here. So we have a reaction that is completely stereoselective. It's happening in water with a little bit of TFA. That works well with the more reactive C nucleophiles, but as we reduce the reactivity, this doesn't happen so easily anymore. So here we treat with 10% TFA to form the hydroxylactam, and in order to get this to react with this weakly reactive C nucleophile, we need a stronger acid, and that's shown down here. Take this one, 10% sulfuric acid in acetic acid or 50% TFA in dichloromethane, and we get only one product. And it's actually important here to have first the weak acid treatment on the solid support and then the strong acid treatment after that. So we tried that with a number of different substituents here to see how does that vary the yield if we have different electron withdrawing or donating groups. And you can see in all cases we get a single product out of this reaction. So it's extremely selective and very nice reaction that only forms one stereoisomer. In this case, we had expected also to get some here, but because of the reduced reactivity, it really finds the place where there's most space. If we look, on the other hand, on this methoxy group here, we definitely see both products, because here we have much more pushing of the electrons from the oxygen into the ring. So this side and this side are evenly reactive. And you can see here, this is the para substitution, and this is the auto substitution. Due to steric reasons, this is smaller. If we take off the metal group, we get more space, and we get a larger one with the auto substitution. We can also use polyaromatic systems, like these ones, to form a lot of rings here. And these reactions are also extremely selective. Here we form only one product in each case, shown here. Here we are a bit surprised that we only get the product here and not here. And you can see we form a single product with this structure. We also tried to see if we can use other types of nucleophiles. This can be oxygen or sulfur. Oops. Oxygen or sulfur. Or nitrogen. I think it works. Here we have nitrogen, sulfur, and oxygen. So we have an R group, which can be either a proton or isobutyl or benzyl, different types of substituents here. And then we have this X as a nucleophile. We get these kind of structures with different ring sizes. And you can see in all cases we get a good product, except for the long chain here. This is a lysine side chain, and this is a very short chain, a serine chain. We don't get any product there. We get a complex mixture. But all the other cases, it worked fantastically, and you can see here the product that we are forming. And it's a festivitas of heterocyclic systems that we are getting out of this. If there's no nucleophile sitting in the side chain, the N-acylaminium ion will actually find the next amide bond and do a double condensation to give these interesting structures. We can also combine this with other organic reactions like the Suzuki reaction. Here we carry out either before or after a Suzuki reaction here at this aromatic residue, all sorts of substituents in these two positions. And we use bis-diphenylphosphine ferrocene dichloride in order to do this reaction. It's a very efficient catalyst for the Suzuki reaction. And it gives us quantitative yields in this first step. The rest of it is also quantitative, so we get very high yields, as you can see here. And this is also shown by the HPLCs of each of these crude products. And here we can install any kind of functionality on the aromatic systems. So a very powerful way to generate these heterocycles. As you have noticed, this ring here has mostly been a 5-membered ring. We would like to know, can we expand that? And we made these longer chains. You can see now we get very good yields, except here where we have n equals 2. So if we have a long chain here, just like we saw before, we don't get a good yield. But here, 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 and here, we get very good yields. So we can make a 6-6 system or 6-7 system, but we cannot make it larger there. So here's examples where we have done this with different nucleophiles, and you can see in all cases we get a quantitative transformation. The vinyl group is a very good source of aldehydes, and it is a very good source of aldehydes because we have the osmium tetroxide sodium periodate oxidation of these, and in the presence of DAPCO, and I must say we have tried every single base in the universe. DAPCO is the only one that is really, really superior here. DAPCO gave us 100% yield of the aldehyde in no time. This is DAPCO. And then we get the hydroxylactam, the iminium ion, and it can condensate here. We have done here with a variety of different substituents on the phenyl group. And here you will see the result. You can see we're just moving methyl groups around here, putting in phenols, making these polyaromatic compounds as well. So it works really well with the vinyl groups as well. So very good source for this reaction. Very easy to install. Here's the vinyl benzenes. We do the oxidation with osmium tetroxide, dihydroxylation, cleavage with the periodate in the presence of DAPCO, and then TFA 50%, and we get the ring closure to this heterocycle. Very interesting compounds, actually. Here's another one in which we are using an O nucleophile instead of a C nucleophile. We can also make sort of a diketopiperazine in this manner using acrylic amides, making the oxidation, getting the aldehyde and getting condensation. Completely new heterocyclic ring system here. This can be done with proline or with N-ethyl amino acids, which promote the cis orientation to give the hydroxylactam. We wanted to use this for something. Maybe it's in the other end. Here we go. Better stay here. Okay, here we have a allyl glycine with an R group here. This is a molecule that we make, and it's positioned here at the N-terminal of the peptide. Is it me? That should not matter. Okay. This is installed here, and you can see we have now formed a locked molecule where we have an amino group here to continue with and a carboxylic acid here. And we wanted to use that for something, and what we focused on was a synthesis of enkephalin analogs, which would be highly active on the mu receptor. And this is allyl glycine installed. We have an O nucleophile here, so we can make this kind of cycle, and then we can continue the synthesis and make this compound with a very locked conformation here. Very active agonist. Over here, we do it differently. We synthesize the peptide first, and then we can actually install this moiety completely selectively after the synthesis. So this is another way to actually do that. Get a very selective reaction. So you can see this is also very pure according to HPLC. The INSIG reaction is another version of the ENIC reaction in which we are using the amino acids. We have turned them around and made an aldehyde from the amino acid, and we use a carbonyl group to connect two amines here. This gives us this kind of product in the reaction, so the aldehyde has reacted with this one and with the nucleophile and give us two new rings. Completely almost completely stereoselectively this time. It can be done with a lot of variety of structure, as you can see, and this is the summary of what the different structures can look like. One of the interesting things, this is sort of how that works. You can see one main product in all cases, not quite as selective as the Erudite reaction, though. So here is a typical reaction. We start out with this dimethoxyphenylalanine. We couple this PFP carbamate onto the amine, and then we do the release of the aldehyde. It reacts with the amide over here, and then we form this new ring and this new ring, and we have a compound. This can actually oxidize, and if we add a little bit of DDQ, we can do this very rapidly to get these kind of interesting positively charged anions, or cations, and these are highly fluorescent. And not only are they highly fluorescent, they are also selective for binding certain ligands. Here is a phosphate buffer at pH 7. Here is water. And this one is water, pH 7. Here is phosphate, pH 7. And you can see the bead simply shines up a lot. So we can also do a dual reaction here. First we do one reaction on the amino group out here at the end with this one. And that forms, here on the side chain, that forms this imidazolone. This imidazolone is now acting as a nucleophile here on a second reaction with a similar compound like this one. We are reacting this amine on this carbonyl group, and then we do the release of the aldehyde to get this compound initially, and that then form these ones on treatment with TFA, completely new heterocyclic ring systems made from the diversity of peptides. So extremely useful. And this is what it looks like in the HPLC. So here's a last example where we are using this reaction to form a ligand for CB1, CB2 receptors. The reaction is first an amide formation here, an imide formation here with this compound with a bromide here. Then we do the amide formation here at this carboxylate to form the amide. We do a reduction, a selective reduction on one of these two carbonyl groups in the time-membered ring to give the hydroxylactam. That forms the iminoamine that reacts with this C nucleophile and give us that structure here. Now we are adding an amine by amidolysis of this aromatic bromide with palladium, and we get this product here. And why are we then synthesizing that product? Well, if we look at this product and fit it into the receptor of CB1 and CB2, it fits exactly into this pocket. And what we would like to do here is to separate the dimerization of this receptor and get a response that is selective for homodimerization and not have the response which is heterodimerization with the HT receptor, which is responsible for the psychotropic effects. So in summary, we can make all of these different ring sizes. We have a very stable structure also around the ring system, and it can be totally combinatorialized. 5, 6, 7-membered rings here, 5, 6-membered rings here, CNSO nucleophiles in this position. We have this hydrogen bond, and this stereochemistry is 100% trans. You also can use the L or the D or the LD or the L all the way through this, so you have a lot of combinatorial possibilities. And this is just a small fraction of the number of templates that we have active. The number of templates that we have actually synthesized, And if I was a pharmaceutical company, I would look a little bit into this because there's a lot of interesting compounds here. So we would like to see, can we use this combinatorially? Now we have developed the method, and here is the method, which is screening of GPCRs with large one bead, one compound libraries. And the assays are based on cells that adhere to this adhesion molecule, which in itself was developed by combinatorial synthesis. We got the best one, which is this one. And that is then attached to the bead together with one of these heterocyclic ligands. When we do that, we can grow the cells in a monolayer. It interacts with the compound on the bead and gives us a signal that we can read, and we can then decipher the compound on the bead to find out what it is. So the way it works is that we have an expression here of a EYFP together with the melanocortin 4 receptor. And when this is activated, this receptor is activated, we get a fluorescent signal in the cell. So when we interact the G-coupled protein with the ligand on the bead, it sends a signal to the nucleus, and we start seeing fluorescent cells. And here you see the example from the library where some cells are lighting up while other beads don't light up at all. Yeah, so this is a melanocortin receptor in the membrane, and we have been looking at this because it's involved in obesity. So we would like here to actually see if we can control obesity with small molecules. We have previously developed a very good assay with macrocyclic peptide ligands, finding very good selectivities. But can we also screen this in a small molecule combinatorial library like this one? Different substituents everywhere, and we have 34,500 compounds in the library that we then treat with the cells, and you can see here a bead where the cells are lighting up. Here's another one, and here. And what we see is general for these ones is that we have a phenyl group out here or benzyl group out in this position. So we captured a lot of active beads, and we used mass spectrometry to identify what is the compound that is active. We can see the major peak here is simply this heterocyclic portion of the molecule, so it's quite easy to decipher the structure. So we got the active compound, here is one of them, but if we look at it more closely, you can see here is an indole and a benzyl, indole and a benzyl, indole and a phenyl, indole and a phenyl. And this is the most reactive one in which the methyl group sticks up here, whereas this one is less active as this one, and so on. So there is actually quite good activity, submicromolar EC50s of these compounds. I'd now like to just conclude by saying we have 4 types of click reactions here. The QAC reaction that we got the Nobel Prize for, the spark reaction that Carolyn got it for, this TCO reaction, which came too late. It came in 2008. And this reaction here, which I think is a very, very useful reaction for a lot of future chemistry. So with that, I would like to thank not only you, but in particular all the people who have been involved in this work, Sarah, Mads, Thomas Nielsen in particular, and Frederik Dines, also Jürgen Bayer, who was the first one to observe the aldehyde formation. No, sorry, that was actually Jörg Rademann who did the first observation of this reaction with the aldehyde and the backbone of the peptide. And then I would like to thank my family, in particular Phaedra Saint-Hilaire, who has been very proliferative in discussions, scientific discussions about all these issues along the way, and my family for accepting late hours in the laboratory. And thank you to you for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. And now we welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor to hand over a memento on behalf of University of Kerala to Nobel laureate Professor Morton P. Meldal.
Thank you, sir. We next invite Dr. Samira for introducing Dr. Fedria Mary Senhiller.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, distinguished colleagues, one and all. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you Dr. Fedria Mary Senhiller. Dr. Fedria Mary Senhiller is a science business leader with over 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical and biotech industry, and a personality with a passion for people development and making change. She is the CEO and Chief Consultant at Fedria Mary Consultant. She is an exponent in the topics of leadership, business development, women empowerment, and career perspectives of women in STEM. In addition to a PhD in chemistry, Dr. Fedria holds a degree in business administration and is a skilled project manager with a Lean 3-star 6 Sigma Black Belt certification. Dr. Fedria has over 45 publications and more than 5 patent applications within chemistry and biochemistry. Dr. Fedria is a sought-after public speaker, mainly on the topics of inclusive leadership, gender equality, career reinvention, and transformations. So please join me in extending a warm welcome today to invite Dr. Fedria Mary Senhiller to the invited lecture.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this warm welcome to God's own country. It reminds me very much of my own country, Dominica. Thank you very much to the Kerala State Government, to the University of Kerala for inviting Morton and myself to come here to speak. We are also very appreciative of our friend Renal Manat, who helped arrange the trip for us, and his wife Chandini, who have been hosting us very well. And special thank you to the state troopers who guide us on the way. As Morton said, I've never before had a police escort, so it's really, really cool. So thank you very much for staying. What I will talk about today, well, I was asked to speak about, to give career advice and women empowerment. And what I will talk about today in the first half, I will quickly go through my career. Because when you are a young scientist, probably most of you think, okay, I'm going to have an academic career or I'm going to industry. But I am proof that there is more to life for a scientist than just academia and industry. So I will go through that. And then I'll also talk about one of my passions, which is gender equality. And this is not for the women in the audience, this is for everybody. So This is just what I'm going to talk about. And that's me. I was 6 years old at the time, and I had no idea what I wanted to be. Some people, when they're 6 years old, they know exactly what they want to be. But for me, it took some time. And then the other one, I'm just saying, it's a magazine from last year where I was selected as one of the 10 most inspiring business leaders, investors in Denmark. So what I will tell is what went on between this little girl you see here and the woman on the cover. So this is my family from Dominica. I was about 13 years old. I had just gotten confirmed. And what I want to point out is there are a couple of things that I want to point out about my family. We were 2 boys and 2 girls, and our parents raised us the same. So my brothers, they did laundry, and their friends actually used to tease them because boys don't do laundry, they don't cook, they don't clean the house. Of course, I'm aware this is changing, but at that time it was quite unusual. At the same time, my parents encouraged my sister and I to, study science, get the best education that we can, because that's the only way we can prosper and be successful. So I chose to study science, and again, one of the expectations was if you're studying science, then there are only 2 things you can be. You can be a medical doctor or you can be an engineer. So those were the career choices available to me. And when I went to study, I got a scholarship to study at the University of South Carolina, and it was with the intention to be a medical doctor. And again, there were 2 things. In the picture with me, you will see my very dear friend, Susan. And she's with me here because I owe her a lot. As a young child, I was extremely shy. You would never find me standing, speaking in front of a crowd. I was insecure and unsure of myself. And she took me under her wing, and she said, well, if you feel that way about yourself, then you need to do something about it. So she actually paid for me to go to this program that helped me be more confident in myself, taught me how to speak, how to dress, how to do so many things. And it really built my confidence that I can be put into any situation and I can be successful in it. So again, the lesson to you, when you observe something in your life that is not exactly where you want it to be, then speak about it, share it, but more importantly, you do something about it to overcome it. The second thing I want to mention about being at the University of South Carolina, if you remember, I was studying to be a medical doctor. But I started doing undergraduate research, and that really, really fascinated me. It was in biochemistry. I was growing cells and looking at the effects on skin cells, and that was where I could feel my passion lied. But how could I tell my parents I don't want to be a medical doctor? It was very, very hard for me, and I felt that there was a lot of pressure. I was putting the family to shame if I chose the academic research, because, you're committing yourself to a life of being penniless. You're not going to be rich. You're not going to be famous. At least that's what they thought. But Morten can tell you that's absolutely not true. Well, not the rich part, but you can get a Nobel Prize and be famous. So one of my professors, I was speaking to him at the time, and I was saying, I think I need to go to medical school. And then he asked me, what is it I really wanted? And I said, I think I want to do research. And he said, Phaedra, you can let things happen to you, or you can make things happen for you. The intention is that you are in control of your destiny, and you make the decisions of what you want to do in your life. It's not your family, it's not anybody else. They can support you or encourage you, give you advice, but ultimately it's your decision. So I took his advice and I went to graduate school. So this is me at Duke University, a first-year chemistry PhD student. Those were some really amazing years. And it was also during those years I began to be aware that the way that women scientists were treated were probably not the same as for the male scientists. I think out of a class of 80, we were about 80 graduate students, we were 20, 30 women. So it was predominantly men. So I joined groups like Women in Chemistry, Women in Science and Engineering to encourage each other how to deal with the not so equal treatment that we face as women in science. It was also at this point that I had to make another decision. Should I stay in the US or should I go someplace else? And being very curious, I decided to go to Carlsberg, and that's where I met Morten. We met in the chemistry lab. So this is a picture of me and my very first research group. I started as a postdoctoral researcher. The intention was to go back to the US, but my career was going quite well. I did some of the groundbreaking mass spectrometry methods that was used for the analysis of the heterocycles that Morten mentioned earlier on. This is some of the things that I did. But there was also once, they did a call for all the researchers to propose ideas for creating a biotech spin-out. And that was one of the things that I participated in, and my project was selected, and I got a small group of PhD and postdocs and a technician to bring the idea to fruition. This led to, this was one of the first failures. The idea did not succeed, and it was actually closed down. But I was fortunate to get a job at another biotech company, which was then purchased by Novo Nordisk. And while I was at Novo Nordisk, at that time, the whole experience in the biotech space, I felt that many people were making decisions that were not right. And as a scientist, I could only give the advice, but not make the decisions. So I wanted to be in a position of making the decisions, and that led me to go into a Copenhagen Business School and study leadership and organization development. And that's me with my son, because that was one of the hardest periods of my life. I started studying when he was 3 years old, and unlike here, where you may have your family to support you, in Denmark, when you are working full-time and studying full-time, it's very difficult because you don't have the family support. So, but I managed to get through it, and when I finished my last exam, I think I slept for a whole week. But those are the sacrifices that you need to make to further your career. So I continued working at Novo Nordisk, and then that meant my career shifted from being a research scientist and a bench chemist to going into leadership and leading a team of people. Also, it meant that I began to work more with setting up external collaborations as opposed to doing research development. I continued, I think I worked for Novo Nordisk for 14 years, and during that time, again, I began to observe that women are treated differently, but not just women. If you are a brown person, if you are not from Denmark, then there's a tendency that you can be undervalued. And I thought that was not really fair. And when something is not fair, then you have to do something about it. So in 2019, my friend and I, we formed Professional Women of Color, which is a non-profit organization to help women of color, all women of color, not just of African descent, to be able to thrive in their careers in Denmark. So whether you are in STEM, whether you're a Southeast Asian, whether you are an artist, our organization welcomes you and helps you to navigate the Danish society. I left Novo Nordisk about 2.5 years ago, and then I formed my own consultant company. So I do consulting in pharma development. But at the same time, I also retrained and I became an executive coach, because one of the things that I did all along the way was to mentor and coach individuals. And I wanted to be able to do it properly. I wanted to be proficient in it. So I went back to school and studied to be an executive coach. So those are two of the things that I do. Then I also wanted, because I love making decisions, I wanted to become on the boards of different companies. So I went to a course to become certified for that. And in that process, I encountered the world of investing in startups, not in stocks, but in startups. And the statistics there are very, very hard. Usually, if you are a female founder or a team of female founder, at least in Europe, you only get about 1% of the funding that's available. And if you're a woman or just a minority, a person of color, the percentage that gets funded is even less. And so I felt I wanted to do something about it. So it's not like I'm a rich person, but whatever money that I have, I invest in different startups and I give them advice and help them grow their business. And this is what led to me being selected one of the most inspiring business angels. So the point is, I think, no, it wasn't, but this morning, Morten mentioned, most of us think of a career as a linear path, but it's not. It can meander, it can go around. You can start in one direction, and then you can shift to another. And that's completely okay. The most important thing is that you spend some time thinking about what is it you want to do in life. How is it you want to make your mark on the world? When you are no longer in the world, what difference would you have made? And we all have dreams, so it's important that you communicate that to people. You speak about it, and you need to network, because you never know who you will meet who will be able to help you and support you to get where you want to. Another thing is you have to be excellent in your field. If you have chosen a field of study, you really need to put a lot of effort into it and be excellent at it. And at the same time, I think it was this morning, the word unilateral career, you don't have to be unilateral. The world is very diverse, and there are so many peripheral subjects that you can learn. So take the courage to try and learn new and different things, because they will stimulate your mind that it can actually help you in your main area of interest. My experience is also very important to surround yourself with people who will support you, but who will also tell you the truth. If you're messing up, it's important for people to let you know that you're messing up, so that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do what you need to do. It's important that you can take action. Sometimes you're in uncertainty, you're not sure what it is to do, or you've had so many setbacks and failures, but you can't let that keep you down. You always have to act. And remember, if you don't make a decision, you are de facto making a decision. You are selecting something. And if you make a decision, after a while you may find out it was the wrong decision, then you can change it back. But it's more important that you decide and you act. There are many people in this world who have gone for life, and what I'm saying is not particularly unique, but you will find that age and experience brings wisdom. And so there are many people who can advise you and support you along your way. Seek them out, find a mentor, find a coach to help you go through life. And the last thing I just want to mention is very important. It's live a balanced and harmonic lifestyle. And by that I mean, yes, I also come from a country where it's very competitive in the academics. It's the maybe 0.0001% who succeeds. And there might be a huge desire to just only focus on your academics and, winning the competition. But you are a whole person. You still have to spend time reflecting, exercising, eating healthily, because that will actually give you the stamina and help you psychologically to be able to withstand the struggles and the battles that you will for sure encounter. I included this slide. I'm not going to go through it, but when I never really had a plan for my life, but I'm a firm believer that everybody should have one. The plan can, of course, change. The roadmap can change. But in December last year, in the Harvard Business Review, they gave this very useful way of making a plan for a life, and also making a plan that makes sure you consider yourself as a whole person and not just as an academic. So I would highly recommend that you find the article, you read it, and see how you can approach it, apply it to your life. And this approach was taken from the approach that businesses do. You know, when a business wants to succeed, they make a strategy and then they follow it. Individuals can do the same thing. If you want to succeed, approach it systematically, just as you would your experiments. I need a time check. Okay. So what I will do, I will move on to the next part, and I will go through it rather quickly. I'm cognizant of the time. Gender balance. I think this is the first time that I'm speaking about gender balance with almost equal males and females. Many other times it's mostly women, but gender balance and gender equity, it's not a women's problem. It's not a women's issue. It's an issue for everybody. Because think about it, if you have a business, you're going to utilize all the resources, all the employees to make sure that you get the best out of it. And it's the same with society. You have males, you have females. It would be a shame for companies not to utilize all the talents and the resources that they have available. If we look at STEM, and I will present data from the EU and the US and Denmark, but in STEM, I think like here, at the high school level, the bachelor degree, maybe even at the PhD level, you'll find there are equal numbers of males and females represented. And I use male and females, I know there are other genders, but for the purposes of this talk, I say male and female. And this, you can see this in the dark blue bars, it's pretty much 50%. However, in this case, after high school, you see a drop, and there are fewer females in STEM. You might say, 38% is not that bad, but if you dig down into it, what you will see, the yellow bars here, they represent the biological sciences. So the so-called soft sciences and the healthcare and pharma, these are populated by women. But if you look at engineers, which are the red, if you look at computer science and math, the gray, you do have fewer women. Yes, the proportion, you can see there's a slight increase, but overall you have fewer women in those fields in Europe. I think it's a bit of a danger not to have women in those spaces, because engineering, computer science, and math are the fields of the future. Of course, chemistry will contribute, and biology will, but there's a huge emphasis on machine learning and AI and data science and data analytics, and you find that there are fewer women in this. If you only have, or if you have predominantly one way of thinking and looking at a problem and not having a perspective from women, and let's face it, we are not the same. We do have different ways of thinking and looking at things. If you only have one set, then the solutions that you will devise are not going to be inclusive of everybody else. You will not get the most innovative solutions by only having one type of mind, having a male perspective. So it's very important that we have more females going into these areas. The other thing I wanted to show, this is also a statistic from Denmark, and it shows the share of women in the workforce, and we're focusing in STEM, but it's reflective of many other areas. You can see at the entry level, there's a higher proportion. Basically, the higher up you go in the company, in the leadership, into the places where the decisions are made, you have fewer women. And again, how can you make solutions that are inclusive of everybody if you don't have that representation? A couple of days ago, I was speaking to some women in Bangalore at a university, and one of the things that they lamented was, yes, The government is putting a lot of effort into educating women, which is great. There's progress. However, the people who are making the policies and the decisions are primarily men. So we need to have more women in higher leadership and in the decision-making areas. This is just to show that, again, this is from Denmark. The boards of companies, they're predominantly men. So it's also a struggle that we have in Denmark, and we are fighting against. How can we have more female representation in all different layers of society and in different organizations in the decision and the policy-making areas? If we look at academia, on average, that's globally, we have about 35% of women in higher education. The next bullet is what I talked about. You know, you have 53% and as PhDs, but when you go to full-time faculty, it's 42%. And if it's a full professorship, it's 26%. If we move down to the other red bullet, I found this statistic about in there. Few women are full-time in academia in India. And on top of that, women across the globe, well, these are from the US, but across the globe, women earn less. So what is it that prevents having so many women in academia? There are many myths about that. You say academia is hard and competitive, and we are just not tough enough. We are too sensitive. We have to learn how to use our elbows and don't worry about the comments, you know, just muscle through and then we will be okay. The other myth is that academia is biased and women are just not good enough. And so when you have to, it may not be in India, but generally if you have to appoint a woman professor, then you are lowering the bar because you cannot find women that are good enough. The first two of those, they are actually not true, and there's been many studies, I have the link here at the bottom of the slide, that show that women are just as good as men. In fact, if you do blind recruitment tests, you would find, like if you switch the names on CDs from male to female, you would find the women are held to a higher standard. Sometimes you can quantify it to be 2.5 times as good as a male in order to be considered equal. So yes, women are good enough. The last one is women do not want to be in academia or are not interested. Again, this is not true. What happens very often is that women in academia and in many other areas, especially if they are dominated by men, we experience many what they call microaggressions. We are talked over, we are ignored, we are paid less, even the students don't treat us with the same high regard. We might get harder evaluations on our teaching, on our grant applications. So when we have to fight these fights all the time, it can be very exhausting. So yes, some women choose not to be in this environment. It's not that we don't want to be in academia, but we do not want to be in an environment where it's exhausting all the time. So there's been many surveys as to why women are underrepresented in STEM. And one of them is the stereotypes. As I mentioned before, women are probably not good enough, or the way the whole family thinks, the family pressure to go into a certain field, more the biological, more nurturing, the more caring field, as opposed to science, to engineering. We may not have sufficient role models. It's the culture, the stories that we see in the media, in the newspaper, and also a lack of self-confidence. Less so differences in education, and I think there's been tremendous strides in India and many other countries in the world in making sure that at least at the primary level, males and females are given very similar opportunities for education. So I would say the top four are the ones that really have an impact on women remaining in academia and rising to the top levels. So one of the things that comes in our way, it's the bias that we all have. Bias is a natural thing. It's something that we all have, and we need to overcome this bias. There are many different kinds of bias, but I'll try to do it shortly. Affinity bias is when you like somebody, so just because you like them, you think they're excellent. You all have this rapport. Another one could be age. If you're old, you're decrepit, not you, darling. And what do you know? You won't be able to work the long hours. And if you're young, you're vibrant, sometimes you're inexperienced. What do you know? You cannot be part of this committee or policy selection. So you have age bias going both ways. Gender bias I've spoken about. And then there's benevolent bias, and that's a very interesting one. It's one where you think you are acting for the good of the person. For example, and I think this is more appropriate for Europe, a woman comes and she has 3 children and she applies for a job, and then the person is thinking, if I hire her, it might be very hard for her to have to manage all this job, especially this job requires traveling, and she has small kids, so I won't offer a job. Without even speaking to the person, they make that decision on the behalf of the person, thinking that you are doing a kind act. So this is benevolent bias. And the halo effect, attractiveness bias, it's similar to the affinity bias, but except if somebody is gorgeous and very attractive, then you automatically assign positive qualities to that person because they're very good looking. So all of these are at play unconsciously, and we have to overcome them, especially the gender one in this case, if we want to have a more equitable distribution of women at the higher levels. What can you do about bias? It's self-reflection. Be aware of them. Ask people to give you feedback when you've done something or said something. How did that sound? Was that bias? You have to be open to getting input. And then once you're aware of your biases, you take a deep breath before you speak, and you act and you make decisions. And question, check, am I really acting in a biased way? So this is very recent research from an article in The Economy, and it talks about the penalty, which is a contributing factor to having inequality, especially in higher positions, gender equality. And if you look, there's a line where you see there's an event which happens where the employment prospects of men and women, so this graph shows employment prospects. So 5 years before the event, or more years before the event, men and women have equal prospects of getting employed. Then something magical happens, and then there's like a 20 or 30% gap in the prospects of being employed. Do you know what that is? It's having a child. So this is called the child penalty or the mother penalty. So it affects a woman's prospects of employment. And this is work from Denmark. It also shows that the similar thing happens when you look at how much they earn. So men with kids, there's nothing really. There's a little bit of a decline. But women with kids, there's a sharp drop. And to show it's not just because of the gender, they also looked at women without kids. So if you're a female without kids, then your earning potential keeps increasing, whereas if you're a woman with a kid, then it decreases. So motherhood and all that it implies really impacts the prospects of women. I'm not saying you should not have children. That's not what I'm advocating for at all. And this is just to make a plug for the latest Nobel laureate in economics, Claudia Goldin. This was some of the work that she did that gave her the Nobel Prize last year in 2023. So what can be done? I talked about the different issues that women face. There are stereotypes, there's bias, there is, you can see from the drop on the slide that I showed previously, that there are issues with the family. So I think it's very important that you address the confidence gap. How you do it, there are different solutions based on the exact situation. But as a woman, it's very important that you you take risks, you put yourself into the situations where you get uncomfortable, you stretch yourself, and every time you have a success, it helps build your confidence. But at the same token, women should be allowed to do that, should be given the opportunities, and we should not always have to be sit in situations where we are talked over, where we are bypassed, because all these things help erode our self-confidence. Bias I talked about, but not just in recruitment, but also in promotions and in funding. Currently, the funding system looks at the number of publications, your citation index. More and more, for example, there's an agency a government agency in the UK that are trying to reframe the way they evaluate candidates for funding. They don't just look at your research papers and your citation index. They look at how many students that you have taught, how many have you mentored, what job opportunities, what jobs do they have afterwards? Do you do community service? So all these things are taken into consideration. And another reason is that typically, like mentoring and coaching, these are very female and nurturing opportunities that we women spend a lot of time doing. So I think it's time that we also get rewarded for that. Number 3 is to reduce the family and cognitive labor, because we women, we spend a lot of time thinking about planning the confirmations, trying to arrange how to get to, yes, we have somebody to take them to the sports activity, but we have to coordinate and plan. We spend a lot of time in the home planning the dinners, whereas we may not execute it, but it takes up a lot of our thinking time we could be using spending on thinking about our research and our next big idea. Finally, it's modify the reward and evaluation system. I alluded to that earlier on when I gave the example of how research is funded in the UK. What behaviors are rewarded? Is it just the people who just think narrowly and just do their work and get their publications in high-impact journals? Or do you also think reward the behaviors where you form students, groups, you are more supportive and a nurturing role, and the teaching and all of that, is that equally rewarded? So that was actually what I had to say, and I hope I've given you something to think about. Most of what I presented, it's from Denmark, the US, and the UK, but from what I can read and hear, there are parallels drawn to India. I know there has been a lot of progress made, and you could say this is a cautionary tale. To maintain the progress, you need to keep on doing what you're doing and do more, but more importantly, make sure that you include women in the leadership positions and in the decision-making policies, especially if it's policies that impact women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. And now we welcome Professor Dr. Radhamani to hand over a memento on behalf of University of Kerala to Dr. Fidria.
Thank you, ma'am. As a token of our love and gratitude to Dr. Renil, we now request Professor T.S. Anirudhan, Emeritus Professor, to hand over a memento on behalf of University of Kerala to Dr. Renil. Please.
Next, we have the interaction session. So I request Professor Meldel as well as Dr. Fredria to be on stage. As we are running short of time, maybe we can restrict it to 20 minutes. So we have had a very excellent talk, 2 talks now, both 2 very different perspectives. One is organic chemistry basically, and second is a very general talk. So I'm sure there is a couple of questions. Dr. Ashita, you can... Yes, you want to ask something?
So this is to Meldon, sir. Professor, this is to Professor Meldon. Here, sir, you mentioned in between that there is a Japanese horseshoe crab, which is a great survivor. What about biomimetics employing it to make new materials? So the emerging science of biomimetics could use this horseshoe crab.
I think it actually has been used because, we are milking this beautiful turquoise blood out of the animals, and we are isolating the macromolecules that are encaging the foreign organisms. And I think they have now made synthetic polymers that do the same thing almost as efficiently as a horseshoe crab. So it's possible to utilize the mechanism of their surviving systems to do medical advances for...
So regarding quantum chemistry, what are the prospects of AI, quantum AI, in deciphering out new molecules? What are the prospects?
I think it's a very good process, quantum AI, and I think it's a very good process for making known molecules, but not for making new molecules, because AI can only do what you have been feeding it. And I have a very good example of that in the AlphaFold. AlphaFold works perfectly if you want to fold an antibody, or if you want to make an enzyme for which there's many representative classes of enzymes in the database, Crystal's database. But if you ask it to fold Boxy or another unknown protein which doesn't have a lot of analogs in the database, it gives you a small center with a small alpha helix and a beta sheet, and then you have these huge unknown structures that surround it. And that's actually how artificial intelligence works. It can only tell you what you have told it before. So there's no creativity in AI.
From students?
Sir, I am from Department of Chemistry, sir. So in your reaction, we have a peptide, to a layer structure peptide, and in between we have sulfur-sulfur linkage. So we want to replace that sulfur-sulfur linkage with the trisol. So my clarification regarding the space between these 2 layers, of course, maybe initially we have a space. So after replacing this sulfur-sulfur linkage with trisol, something like that, so of course space may be improved.
No, but that's because you see it as a two-dimensional representation here.
Yeah.
So the beta hairpin is actually characterized by having hydrogen bond between the two strands. And that keeps the beta hairpin like one coming up here and then going back there.
Yeah.
And there's a turn in one end. So what you do is the disulfide bond actually sticks out on the top and connects the two ends of the beta hairpin. So what we do is just a longer bridge, a little bit longer, that goes over and goes down again with a triazole. So the distance between the two is exactly the same. It just holds it in place. And the bridge is on the side, which is not important for the interaction with the membrane and for making the pore. So that's why it works.
So is there any aggregation of this triazole, something like that? Aggregation of 2 molecules or 3 molecules in between this space?
Yeah, but there's no space in between because they're really hydrogen bonded together, the two strands.
Yeah.
So they sit in this beta sheet kind of conformation where you have hydrogen bonds between the carbonyl groups on one peptide backbone and the amides on the other peptide backbone. So if you can imagine the backbone of the peptide going around like that with a disulfide bond connecting in one end and the recognition residue sitting down here, which forms the pore and let the material from inside the cell come out. So this actually doesn't change the conformation very much during this entire process. It just forms a dimer that hides away this lipophilic part which forms the pore in the membrane.
So can we again replace that triazole with the sulfide linkage? Again, we want to create? I don't know whether...
Yeah, the reason that we want to put in this triazole, actually there's several reasons, but one of the reasons we want to put in the triazole is because then we have a non-biological residue there, which cannot be handled by the metabolic systems. So if you have the resistance to the antibiotic due to reductive cleavage of the disulfide bond, which is highly likely, there's a lot of reductases out there, then you have to replace it with something that nature doesn't know and cannot handle. It could be a carbon chain all the way, or it can be a triazole like we do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Professor, I would like to ask some question. We are in the era of artificial intelligence, and we are seeing kind of softwares developing about AlphaFold and AlphaFold 2, protein protections kind of stuff. What do you see about the future if we combine your idea of click chemistry and protein prediction stuffs and artificial intelligence and about the AI race? Probably both of you can answer. And I believe both of you guys have the answer to the question.
So the AI is, of course, very important. I don't say that AI is not useful. I just say that it's not very creative. And this is a thing that is very important for the way that the human brain works, is that you have something sitting over here and you have something sitting over here, and for some odd reason you start making a connection between these two things, and then something happens. And this doesn't happen in a computer. So whether you make it quantum or not, it's not going to happen. So artificial intelligence, I think, is extremely important for analyzing large data amounts, which we cannot overview with a human brain. The computers are necessary. And artificial intelligence is very good at extracting patterns, for example. And it's very good at looking at these large data sets and characterizing where different things belong in the data sets. So grouping them and analyzing where what kind of properties they have, based on a knowledge database that we have given it. And that's why I cannot use artificial intelligence in the work where we are using, for example, for making proteins, a mixture of L and D amino acids. There's nothing exists on that. The AlphaFold would never work with that without the data. behind it, and we don't have those data yet. So when you make something new, how can artificial intelligence tell you what to do?
Yes, sir. So,
do you want my comment?
Yeah, sure.
I don't quite agree. I agree that I mean, there are many different forms of artificial intelligence. There's machine learning, and yes, you can do a lot of data analysis. But I do think that artificial intelligence or generative AI is evolving to the point where it can actually come up with something new, not from something that it already knew before. That's why there are a lot of experts who work with artificial intelligence. They're sounding the warning that we have to be careful with how we let it loose. Because there is, I'm not saying it's widespread now, but there are a few instances where totally new things have come out from artificial intelligence. And it can be a blessing or a curse. It's just how we handle it, how we human beings regulate it, whether we are open, whether there is transparency, whether there are global united policies about how to handle and work with artificial intelligence.
Sure, thank you.
Another short comment on that, and that is, no, okay. Artificial intelligence is essentially, if we let it loose, a dangerous thing, in particular because it's so useful in defense, where you collect data from the entire society that you are targeting, and you decide where to actually do your activities. So the next very small step is to allow the artificial intelligence to actually release whatever action you want to have towards that target. And that is a very, very dangerous thing to do. And it's almost sure that it will happen because that is what secures the efficiency of the defense.
Sure, thank you, sir. And I represent from the Department of Computational Biology. That's why I mentioned about artificial intelligence and their combinations. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Sir, we have read that your works are always driven by curiosity and passion rather than just thoughts about the career. So, could you share from your experience, like what helped you to maintain this curiosity and passion all the time?
Well, I have always been wild about nature. I think nature is a fantastic thing. We humans are like viruses in nature. And are destroying it at a very rapid rate at the moment. So I think it is very important to actually look at nature as something that is a passion, something that we should really care about. Because we are going to destroy what essentially is the ground on which we stand, which is the way nature works. So paying attention to that is what created my curiosity for chemistry originally, and this has been a passion for me ever since. So actually I'm I cannot stop thinking about these things. So once I'm looking at a chemical reaction, let's say the polymer that I presented in the start of the talk, these polymers was something that I got the ideas vaguely at a meeting, talking to other polymer chemists. It solidified on the plane back home. I was thinking, how could I actually carry it out? I took it back to the lab, and for the first time I did a polymer reaction. I never done it before. And I made an equipment that looked like something that could work. And then I stirred it up and got the beads. And it was a fantastic thing, which I was dreaming of every night in the period. You know, how can I do the next day, do it better? Should I increase the temperature, lower the temperature? Should I do longer, shorter chains of the macromonomers? And all of those things that really matters for the successes should be in your thoughts most of the time if you want to keep the inspiration. It should not be, oh, I should work against the Nobel Prize, because that hill is really, really high. And there's no successes on the way. The success is the success you get the next day because you solved a small problem and added to your successes upon success. And build a platform, build the system in which you can actually thrive.
Thank you, sir.
I would say also it's still like that for me. I like to go to the lab. I like to help the students and help myself do research in the lab. That's really important.
Good evening, sir. Sir, in order to overcome the notion that chemistry is always considered as an evil subject among public, how important is visualization in bridging the gap between the abstract and the tangible?
I think chemistry is a three-dimensional science, a four-dimensional science. It goes on in time, and it goes on in space, and all molecules are three-dimensional, and it's the fitting of the molecules in the three dimension that really makes everything possible. There is not one single reaction in the biology that isn't characterized by a very specific interaction between two partners before anything happens. So if it's an enzyme reaction, if it's an antibody recognition, if it's a receptor that binds to a ligand, it's a very specific interaction that we don't really understand yet. So there's a lot of research to be done still to understand that and be able to predict and control molecular interaction, which is the first and very important step in anything, even in inorganic chemistry, in minerals and crystallizations and stuff like that. So your question was...
Actually, I'm asking about the role of visualization for the if a person coming from
that visualization, of course, becomes extremely important to understand those things. And visualization can be done by help of computers, but essentially it's also very important that you can visualize, in chemistry, very important that you can visualize how the polar bonds are interacting and why they are doing what they are in reactions and so on. So visualization is essential, and that's actually why I am supporting that we start our education of children from the very first grade in school in chemistry, doing it in a nice and pleasurable way with images and videos and VR to teach them what this three-dimensional world, how molecules move around, water fast, moving protons, shifting positions, large proteins tumbling very slowly around. Looking at this from a three-dimensional point of view, in movement, in four-dimensional point of view, actually allow you to understand kinetics like that later on, for example, instead of suffering a whole year of physical chemistry trying to understand these kinetic equations. So I think that this is very important, since chemistry is everything. There's nothing around us that is not molecules that we can touch or breathe. And therefore, chemistry is so important to teach also laymen, not only scientists. Everybody needs to know about the chemistry that composes this world. So visualization is essential.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I have a question to Madam and another one to Professor Mulder. So, you rightly observed that the women around their marriage and childbirth lower their financial as well as career prospects. Okay, so my question is, do you have a solution? Do you have any suggestion? First part, and second part, in developing countries or in any other countries, what is being done for solving this? Is there any support system or any type of like solution being practiced in there?
That's a very good question. And I can tell you there are many, many people researching that phenomenon, why it happens and what can be done. We know that part of the issue is that many women, after they have a child, then they would work part-time. They are not promoted, as much because they are not seen as valuable. Very often, especially if you work for a global company, then it would require traveling, or they might send you off to another country, and that's some of the ways that people progress in the hierarchy, but also in their earning income. So those are some of the factors. But still, even when they account for that, there's still about, I think, like 20% or 50% that they cannot explain by these factors. So then it's due to societal perceptions and bias that a woman with children is not a valued employee. And I'm generalizing. I know there are many exceptions. There are many women who succeed despite that. And if we look to their example, some of them, the roles are reversed. It's the woman who has the higher paying job, more progressive career, and her husband stays at home, helps with the kids. In many Western countries, childcare and having a family to help you take care of family, that's not very common. So I think that's actually an advantage, or it could be an advantage in the developing countries when you do have that family support system. Some of the things that have been tried in Europe is to make men and women parents, or male and female parents, seen as equally valuable, is by regulating the parental care. In Iceland and Sweden for many years, the men must take 3 months paternity leave. I think there's like a whole year of paternity leave. And they've seen very positive effects from that. And it was recently instituted in Denmark. And of course, there was a huge uproar, even from some women, but not because they did not think it was the right thing to do, but because they felt that the state should not interfere in their personal life. So, because that's one of the fears. You feel like a woman is going to go off and disappear and not be productive for a whole year or for a month. But if it happens to both men and women, then of course the scales are being balanced more. Another thing, I think it's in Canada they practice, is helping women come back slowly. So I don't know about you, but I think a lot of women, after the kid is 3 months, then you might get bored staying home all the time, and you really want to get back to work. So some have set programs where women come back gradually and earlier than the entire maternity leave that's allowed. And that has also been very successful in sort of keeping them in the loop. They're keeping abreast. Some of them, the women do extra training courses while they are on maternity leave. So when they come back, they have learned something new and they can contribute in a different way. Some put daycare centers closer to the office, the organization. There are a few that actually pay for it or heavily subsidize it, so that way it's easy for both parents, both males and females, to bring and deliver and get the child support care that they need. So these are some of the initiatives that I've heard about. But I think the most important one, and the one that's more difficult, is the perception, the mindset, the way you look at a woman, where we as a society value a woman who has had a child or who has children. How do we value that woman in a workplace? Not so much in the home, because we know women are very valuable in the home, but even if we have children, we're also very valuable and can contribute in the workplace equally as men.
Sir, the second innate click reaction you are trying, is it done always on the resin, or will it work outside the resin?
It works everywhere, in solution, in solid support, and it's always 100% or 0%. That's how it works. It's like a digital reaction. Either it works or it don't. So that's really, really cool, because you can see immediately, you don't have to worry anymore about that, because it will never succeed, or you can see this is a great success. I would also like to say that men can also be valuable at home.
Thank you.
Due to paucity of time, we'll take one last question. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Joshua Husseini from Mathematics Department. Research scholar, PhD research scholar. So throughout your presentation, I was very curious to hear maybe you will share your stories towards becoming a Nobel laureate, your stories about developing the Keogh reaction. But maybe I don't know whether if you can share it now, it will motivate some of us that are working towards.
Yeah, I will give you a short brief on that.
But my curiosity now that made me to this, is there any connection, like while developing the Keogh reaction, was there any mathematical connection that maybe you encounter while doing it?
No, as I said previously, these kind of things comes out of odd behaviors of nature, and you don't expect them to happen. Because if you expected them to happen, you would probably have done it long before I did. And that's simply the logic of science is that if it's going to be novel, really novel, you cannot really predict it. So that is why we, at least in chemistry, very often see the most exciting new discoveries being completely serendipitous, and this goes for almost all the Nobel Prizes. And also in our case, so this was, of course, done back in 2000, and in our case, the whole thing actually builds up over 20 years. A lot of new developments of this reaction, how it can be used, and I've just told you a very small portion of that today. I usually also go into, as you asked for, what about the ceremony and the Nobel Prize and all of that. I usually take that, but today I wanted to give a scientific introduction to this new reaction. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Morton P. Meldon, and thank you, Dr. Fedria, for this interactive session. Now, I invite Dr. Sandhya, Department of Chemistry, to formally propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening all. On behalf of the Department of Chemistry, I stand before you today with a heart full of gratitude and appreciation for the wonderful moment we have shared during this Erudite lecture. On behalf of the University of Kerala, I extend my warmest thanks to everyone who contributed to the success of this event. First and foremost, we would like to express our deepest sense of gratitude to our esteemed guest of honor, Professor Morton P. Meldon, for accepting our invitation and gracing us with this erudite lecture. Many thanks to Dr. Fedria Mary St. Hilaire for her wonderful lecture on women empowerment, and it was awesome interaction. Our gratitude extends to Kerala State Higher Education Council for supporting us in conducting this very special event. Our humble gratitude to our patron, Professor Dr. Mohan Kundumal, Vice Chancellor, University of Kerala, for coming over here and delivering presidential address. A big thanks to our dear syndicate members, Professor K.G. Kopchandan and Professor Radhamani for their presence. We lovingly thank Dr. Renil and his wife for the crucial role they have played in connecting us with the Nobel laureate. Our gratitude to all media, including leading newspapers, All India Radio and C Malayalam News Channel, for covering this event. Thanks to Mr. Anand and his team for a live recording of this event on our university YouTube channel, and to the photographer, Mr. G. A big thanks to all our participants from various colleges, institutes, other universities, and our sister departments who poured their talent and energy into making this event truly spectacular. Our sincere appreciation goes to the program committee, including all faculty, the supporting staffs, postgraduate students, PhD scholars from our department, chemistry department, for their hard work. So finally, thank you one and all for being a part of today's meaningful gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya. With this, we come to the end of the formal function. Thank you all for making this event a memorable success. Let's rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
We request the students to be seated and